Social and political organizations around the world reiterate their solidarity with Venezuela and reject the U.S. military deployment in the Caribbean. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum led at Zócalo Square the event for the celebration of the 7 years of the government's fourth transformation plan. And several foreign ministers rejected the announcement made by Israel regarding Palestine's Rafah crossing and the authorization solely for outbound circulation. In several countries around the world, Solidarity Day for Peace in the Caribbean are being held in the response to the military threats imposed by Washington on the Caribbean countries. Social organizations and activists from several countries expressed their solidarity with Venezuela in the face of the siege by the U.S. empire. The organizations condemn the interferential actions of the U.S. government that endangered the Caribbean as a zone of peace. For its part, the Venezuelan government denounced the false arguments about the Trump administration's alleged fight against drug trafficking, which is aimed at attacking and taking over natural resources of its country. Citizens of Puerto Rico defended the sovereignty of the peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean with banners and slogans. They called for peace and the closure of U.S. military bases in their country and the region. And in the province of Vizcaya, Spain, dozens of people mobilized to oppose the imperialist policies of Washington in Venezuela under the pretext of the fight against drug trafficking. Italy also spoke out against the imperialist policies of the United States. From the city of Florence, social movements protested to demand an end to the aggression while expressing their solidarity with the Venezuelan people. Also in this context, the International Anti-Imperialist Summit of Senegal voiced its support for Venezuela.
From Dakar, Senegal, we send you our warmest regards and unwavering support for the Bolivarian Revolution in the face of attacks from the United States and threats to invade Venezuela. No to war to Venezuela.
And following flight irregularities detected after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to close the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela, Colombia's Transport Minister María Fernanda Rojas expressed her rejection to the imposition of air blockades in the region.
It is very important to do everything in our hands to prevent the blockade of the airspace. In this case, Venezuela's, but at any moment it could be ours, anytime now. Imagine if we had the sabotage that we have today, because the previous one was an OTAN, which instead of having technical and operational content, really had the intention of a more political blockade of the airspace, breaking the rules of international aviation, breaking the Chicago Convention, which is what establishes that rules for the respect of sovereignty as a central principle. That's what happened before, but right now we have a more serious situation, which has led some of those airlines that were flying to redouble their measures. The director of aeronautics will refer to that, but that is an issue that we need to address directly with the President of the Republic.
Furthermore, Rojas denounced recent cyber attacks and the manipulation of air positioning systems, which she described as sabotage attempts and a crime that threatens the security of the entire international community.
Es muy importante que los medios sepan. Se están emitiendo señales engañosas, ciberataques.
It is very important that the media knows that deceptive signals are being broadcast, cyber attacks, signals that aim to deceive positioning equipment and GPS devices. I believe that this goes beyond any crime, and I believe that there should be a statement, hopefully today, from the ICAO and international bodies. Because sabotaging an air operation anywhere in the world in today's technological age is a crime. We cannot allow this. The international community cannot allow this. Today it is Venezuela, tomorrow could be Colombia or any other country.
Hoy es Venezuela, mañana podría ser Colombia o cualquier otro país del mundo.
In the United States, on Thursday, the first meeting of the Congressional Committee investigating government operations against vessels in the Caribbean was held in Washington. The committee's probe examined a U.S. strike launched on September 2nd on a vessel in Caribbean sea waters, which represented the first action of an operation by the North American government to allegedly combat drug trafficking in the region, which has killed at least 80 people to date. In this regard, the congressional meeting reviewed videos of the attack which showed the execution of 2 survivors of the strike after they raised their hands in surrender. On the same day, media outlets revealed that the Pentagon's legal advisors warned from the outset that the action was illegal.
But what I saw in that room was one of the most troubling things I've seen in my time in public service. You have 2 individuals in clear distress, without any means of locomotion, with a destroyed vessel, who were killed by the United States.
We have our first break coming up. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. And I'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. President Claudia Sheinbaum affirmed that Mexico will not give in to the pressure of the media war promoted by right-wing sectors against her government. On Saturday, the Mexican president gave an overview of the achievements of the fourth transformation promoted by the Morena party. In her speech, she denounced the opposition's campaigns focused on undermining her government's reputation. Earlier, the Mexican people mobilized to express their support for President Claudia Sheinbaum, who, according to polls, has an approval rating of over 70%.
During these days, it has been demonstrated that even though they can carry out dirty campaigns in social networks, even though they try to buy bots and robots, even if they try to do alliances with groups of power in Mexico and abroad, even they can hire some analysts and communicators in order to spread lies in news outlets, even if they continue to try to sell the idea to the world that Mexico is not a free and democratic country, even if they continue to spread alleged experts that are in making up fiction stories, even if they try to weave new alliances with conservatism here and abroad, even if they try to do all of that, they will not win over the people of Mexico or their president.
President Claudia Sheinbaum highlighted social and economic progress achieved during the fourth transformation.
We went from a country governed by an oligarchy, where presidents and institutions, public institutions, were only serving a few that thought they owned Mexico, to a true democracy, where the government works in the favor of everyone, but especially for those who need it the most. So this be heard. We came to government in order to continue and to deepen that fourth transformation of the public life in Mexico.
In Honduras, the Attorney General Joel Zelaya announced an investigation against the National Electoral Council for irregularities in the electoral process. According to the instruction of the Attorney General, he has ordered the Technical Criminal Investigation Agency to immediately enter the headquarters of the electoral body to collect evidence, documents, and all the necessary material required by his office. While the country continues to await definite results, the prosecutor has requested all these materials to investigate numerous complaints of conspiracy, extortion, as well as the accusations made by 3 members of the National Electoral Council who, in the words of the prosecutor, are not fulfilling the interests of Honduras. And on Saturday, Caracas, the capital of Venezuela, hosted the National Constituent Plenary of the indigenous community within the framework of the defense of Venezuela's national sovereignty. Representatives from 34 indigenous peoples of the Venezuelan territory participated in the gathering with the objective of promoting the work of the communities and discuss their demands presented at the municipal assemblies. Precisely the preservation of the country's ancestral culture through tending to the needs and demands of the indigenous communities is contemplated in the government's 7th transformation plan. In this context, participants reaffirmed their commitment to the defense of the Venezuelan territory against the ongoing threats and harassment from the United States government. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, held a telephone conversation this Saturday with the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, in which they exchanged positions, criteria and assessments on global geopolitics, as well as on the most recent global events that affect the stability and future of humanity. Through a statement, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan expressed his deep concern about the threats recently looming over Venezuela, particularly the military deployment and various actions aimed at disrupting peace and security in the Caribbean. He expressed his solidarity with Venezuelan people and his commitment to defending international law and the sovereignty of nations. For his part, President Nicolás Maduro explained in detail the illegal, disproportionate, unnecessary, and even extravagant nature of these threats, making it clear that Venezuela continues to work steadfastly for economic growth, national peace, and political stability. Finally, President Nicolás Maduro extended an invitation to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to visit Venezuela on the occasion of the 5th meeting of the Venezuela-Turkey Joint Commission, scheduled to be held in 2026, where the framework for political, social, economic, and cultural cooperation between the two countries will be expanded and deepened. We now have our second break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. A final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. This Friday, several foreign ministers rejected the announcement made by Israel regarding the Rafah crossing and the authorization solely for outbound circulation. The foreign ministers of Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, Pakistan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Egypt have objected to Israel's announcement to open in the coming days a Rafah border crossing to allow exclusively the departure of Palestinians from Gaza into Egypt. In a joint statement, they demanded that Israel adhere to the U.S. plan, including its provisions on maintaining the crossing, which envisions movement in both directions, guaranteeing the population's freedom of circulation. They reaffirmed that they will continue working on the basis of that plan. And on Friday, the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, warned that more than 4.1 children in Southeast Asia have had their education interrupted since the end of November due to flooding and other climate disasters. The organization's spokesperson, Ricardo Pires, regretted that many of these students in countries such as Vietnam, the Philippines, Thailand, and Indonesia have faced devastating effects of typhoons and floods, forcing them to live in shelters, some of them without basic services. The agency recalled that the climate crisis halted the education of 242 million students globally in 2024 alone. It also warned that the pattern of disasters in Asia is of unprecedented magnitude, leaving communities no time to recover and children without the education they need. Also Friday, for the 6th consecutive week, Cuba's President Miguel Díaz-Canel returned to visit areas affected by Hurricane Melissa in the east of the country. In the municipality of Tercer Frente, located in Sierra Maestre mountain range, the head of state inspected the rehabilitation work on roads, housing, and basic services, accompanied by national and local authorities. The itinerary included a visit to the Coffee Experimental Center, where Hurricane Melissa caused damage to almost 90% of the infrastructure and affected coffee plantations and other crops. President Díaz-Canel also visited the Mario Muñoz Monroe Educational Center, which suffered severe structural damage, mainly to roofs and carpentry. In St. Lucia on Friday, Philippe J. Pierre was sworn in as Prime Minister for a second straight term, following his St. Lucia Labour Party's resounding victory in the December 1st general election. Pierre took the oath of office at the government house in Mount Fortune in the presence of several regional heads of government and dignitaries, among them Prime Minister of Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, and the former Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. During his speech, Pierre outlined his government's priorities for the new term, including confronting youth unemployment, accelerating digital transformation, and further modernizing the education system. Furthermore, he pledged that his administration would continue prioritizing vulnerable groups and vowed to march forward with purpose and discipline as his administration strives to make the island the best place to live and work.
Our administration will continue to remember the vulnerable. We cannot speak of preserving human dignity and a more equitable society if we are not prepared to address the basic needs of the vulnerable and differently able, so that everyone can have a dignified existence. In our new term, we will continue to target interventions to those most in.
This political scenario, the leader of St. Lucia's opposition United Workers' Party, Alain Chastanet, formally tendered his resignation on Friday. The decision comes after the UWP's defeat in the 2025 general election held on Monday, December 1st, where the party secured only one seat, while ruling St. Lucia Labour Party won 14. In an official press release, the party confirmed that Chairman Thero Prudent had received Chastanet's resignation letter, which is now to be formally tabled for consideration by the National Executive at its next scheduled meeting during the second week of December. The leader, who has held the role for 12 years, was blamed for several political observers for the party's poor performance at the polls. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.